there, chipmunks! Welcome to the AMP Cycling Ride Review Series. I'm your host, Angry Chipmunk, and today we're in Italy taking on the brutal Monte Zoncolan. This route is available on Rouvy, so let's get right to it. Now, this is a climb-only route, so very short at just under 11 kilometers long, but with a massive 1,213 meters of elevation gain. The whole ride averages 11% and peaks at 19%. You're not going to be having those short pinches that peak at that gradient. Heaps of extended sections of this climb are going to be north of 15%. There is one Strava segment on Rouvy with 11 on Strava itself. They range from partial sections of the climb to the full climb. Each full climb segment is a bit different in where it starts and ends, but all of them are considered HC climbs. And the shorter segments listed are all mostly Cat 2. Any way you look at it, this one is just a toughie. Almost the entire route here is positive gradient, so it's no real surprise that straight out of the starting gate we're on to climbing. However, the first 1 kilometer is very mild, with the gradients around 2 to 6%. And then at the 1 kilometer mark, you turn off the main road and have the first real climb. It's listed on Strava as first climb. It is 1.5 kilometers long with 139 meters of elevation gain, averaging 9.7% and peaking at 13%. This one is only considered a Cat 4 climb, which is a little underrated perhaps. As soon as the gradient map hits the orange, it starts to ramp up from 6%, and once it hits 9%, it won't go below that again until the yellow. The first half of this one is mostly 10 to 13%, with the second half seeing mostly 9 to 10%. A reprieve? Yes. A good one? No. This is a pretty difficult way to start a difficult route, and I would suggest spinning this one easily, as Zoncolan proper will be far more difficult. From the end of the first climb to the start of Zoncolan, you get about 500 meters of easy. Again, don't push this part too hard, as Zoncolan comes up pretty quickly. The included Rouvy segment is Monte Zoncolan. It's at the 3 kilometer mark, is 9.7 kilometers long, with 1,030 meters of elevation gain, averaging 13% and peaking at the route max of 19%. No surprise, this one is considered an HC climb. This is somewhat a segment of 2 parts. The vast majority is very steep and very tough, but nearing the summit it does back off quite a bit to the lighter orange and yellow. It's not really useful as any kind of energy conservation tactic though, it's just more of a nice bit of rest to the end of the route. The start of Zoncolan is going to immediately throw you into double-digit gradient, and most of that is going to be above 14%. The start is so difficult, you'll not even see sub 10% for almost 5 kilometers of this climb. This section requires extreme pacing. There is nowhere here where you can easily stop and get started again. There's a short 8 to 9% reprieve for about 200 meters before you're again into 10% plus for another 800 meters. And unlike most climbs, the last 2 kilometers of this one are actually the easiest part of the climb. You'll not be getting a full-on rest, but the gradients will back off all the way down to about 2.5%. There's a few short pinches, but it will mostly remain under 10%. At around 500 meters to go, you'll end up sitting and spinning while the camera car and a truck figure out how to pass each other. This is extremely frustrating, as you are then faced with a few steep switchbacks that are again 15 to 17%. They are the last thing before the summit. And the summit is slightly before the end of the route, so you get a lofty 100 meters or so of pleasant downhill to the end. Coast on in or push it hard, as it is still part of the segment if you want to finish strong with a good time. For difficult passes like this, I like to ascend at less than FTP, as I know I'm going to tire about midway through. Energy conservation is key for these tough climbs. Even spinning slower in a harder gear on some of the very steep bits helps me use less energy than spinning quickly in an easier gear. And for this ride, you'll need an extremely good warm-up and cool-down. A minimum of 15 minutes on either side would be ideal. I'd focus more on the warm-up here, as there's plenty of ways to release your muscles if you simply can't spin anymore. And pre-fueling this ride is a must. It's very tough from the word go, and you'll not be finding any spots on the ride itself where you can easily eat something. Have plenty of protein on board when you start this one. I would aim to fuel mostly with faster acting carbs or sugary things that are also a bit slower, such as chocolate. I don't like heavier bars for passes as they are difficult to chew and tend to sit heavily in my stomach. The faster carbs will wear off more quickly, however. This isn't such a long route that you really need to worry about fueling for the next 2 hours after you finish it, so faster carbs is still a better choice in my opinion. I would definitely have an electrolyte water for this one, no matter what time of year you're doing it. A post-ride protein is a must, as well as some kind of magnesium supplement. I would also recommend protein-heavy meals for the rest of the day as well to help keep you stabilized. The view on this ride is amazing as always. Italy is beautiful and mountain passes are beautiful. There's a great small village you pass through at the start of the route, which is a really nice way to set things off. You don't get much in the way of big mountain views when you're actually climbing the pass, but there's still plenty of small one-lane roads with deep green overhanging trees. The summer sky is amazing with bright blues and big fluffy clouds. I tried to pace this one easily and completed the ride in just under 1.5 hours on 100% difficulty emulation. With needing a very good warm-up and cool down, I would suggest to budget anywhere from 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours for it. It's definitely not a good choice for those with time constraints. And due to the nature of this pass, I would not suggest stopping and starting again. There's no real spot where you can easily pick it up, and with Zoncolan being one segment, you'll miss out on that all-important Strava time by splitting it up. Overall, this is a fantastic ride with a super difficult climb. I would definitely recommend it for the climbing enthusiast. If you're a newer climber, however, I would give this one a pass until you've done quite a few easier ones with similar elevation gains. This is a ride that requires planning, so be sure to keep the rides that surround it nice and light duty so you have the energy to ascend. For this route, I give a 5 out of 5. The route itself here is great. You get a wonderfully difficult climb for free, and the nice neutral zone start in the small town makes it feel like you've just set off from the local cafe. For the climbs, 5 out of 5 and 6.5 out of 5. The first climb is so difficult, just being thrown at you pretty much immediately. Then Zoncolan starts and it's brutal. The 5 kilometers of 14+% is insane. This is one of the most difficult climbs that I did on Rouvy, and even when it backs off, it's nowhere near easy. For the view, 5 out of 5. It's not the best mountain views on offer, but what you do get is a totally immersive feel with the small enclosed roads. And overall, 4.5 out of 5. The end of this route with the difficult passing of the truck is unbelievably frustrating. I spent about 10 seconds spinning my legs and not moving. And the gradient in that spot is 11%, so not an ideal place to get stuck. And while Rouvy doesn't really stop you and you don't have to start again, it still breaks up the flow of the ride. Having it right before the steep switchbacks was, while not planned, less than ideal. Well, that's it for this review, so thanks for watching, chipmunks. Please let me know what you think of the brutally steep Monte Zoncolan when you complete it. I'll leave you to finish the rest of the ride, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks for another review. Until then, ride on, chipmunks, ride on.